Hi everyone, just adjusting the screen and I will say hello to you. Thank you for joining me. This is a pre-collaborate session because I just feel that there needs to be a little bit more explanation on the learning objective critically reflect on personal literacy. There have been a few questions and they've been genuine questions and they're posted on the discussion board for you to refer to if you feel like just to have a look to see what people have been asking about. I think that this just needs a little bit more explanation. So I will take you through the assessment and just pull out these aspects. I'll also take you into the week 10 learning materials where there's an activity that's posed for an opportunity for us to work together to actually work out what we think is legitimate evidence of this learning objective. And we'll also look at the supporting details that you can refer to, so the ACER test and the standards. So I will move along. So this is straight from the assessment overview. There's the blurb about what the assessment is, and then I've just pulled out the learning objective for critically reflect on personal literacy. So just to put into context, this is a place where you will also critically reflect on and evaluate your professional growth as a teacher and demonstrate your developing ability to meet personal literacy and other requirements for professional teaching. This assessment supports your ability to demonstrate the achievement of the following unit learning outcomes. So there's 3 of them there, and we're just focusing on 6, critically reflect on personal literacy, over the next few slides. So, unit assessment and overview continued. The artefacts you include in the folio can also assist you in demonstrating evidence for proficiency with regard to relevant professional standards. So there's some links there, and these also link to personal literacy, which they're quite matched. As such, you may wish to draw on your work here when compiling your portfolio for your final supervised professional experience unit. So hopefully this is useful. Additionally, you need to demonstrate your own personal literacy. This includes language literacy needed for the ACER test and the numeracy test, and also evidence of your digital literacy. So that's your ability to use ICT, informational literacy, ability to research and synthesize information, collate, curate and locate. And then critically reflect on the skills you may need as a teacher to continue your personal and professional development. With reference to the Assessment 2 criteria, this is what we're looking for this part of the assessment. A critical reflection of your own personal literacy supported by evidence of your literacy development. And we'll talk about the evidence in a minute. This will be a 500-word reflection written in first person, supported by literature of your own personal knowledge and understanding of literacy across the curriculum, and you should reflect upon and discuss your knowledge of the literacy conventions and demands in relation to the 3 literacy dimensions, your strengths and areas to develop in relation to the unit material, and this one here needs to be removed because there is no competency test in this unit, so this does not apply. So this was an oversight and will be taken out of the assessment for the next round. So I apologise to you for this being in the document. You're encouraged to include your perspectives of the readings and links that are included within the unit, and also your own sources, reading material, and include a reference list. So that is normal standard practice. Now I've just popped in the rubric here with reference to critically reflect on personal literacy. So a pass is that you provide evidence of personal literacy achievement or development. Then we move into a critical reflection level in credit. The distinction is a comprehensive and critical reflection, and there's a little bit more detail down here. Clear and relevant evidence of personal literacy is incorporated into the work and discussed in a cohesive manner, demonstrating both understanding and profession. And that's just been cut off, apologise. And then high distinction, comprehensive, critical and evaluative reflection of both literacy planning and teaching and own personal literacy development has been provided. So that just sets the context of what it is that's going to be assessed from your 500 words. So refer to week 10 for this information if you need to see a little bit more detail. I've just taken the main aspects. There are 2 activities for that week, and they're split into 2 parts. So first we'll be working in groups and then bringing the findings back for review. You'll have access to the copy of the Assessment 2 evidence list, which is on the next slide you have a look at. And you need to read the key sections of the ACER Literacy and Numeracy Test Assessment Framework. So it's not actually the test itself, it's the backup document that provides the context for how the assessment was put together. And you'll unpack the reading for the activity when demonstrating the evidence of Assessment 2. So individual research and analysis will be required, and then we'll form a discussion. So in brief, you will look at the ACER Literacy and Numeracy Test Assessment Framework. You'll have a look at the Assessment 2 folio and come back together to come up with some consensus. This is the evidence list. So what's happened here is this has come from the ACF Stanford, the Australian Core Standards Framework, and has been taken from level 5. So that's the top level of the document. So level 4 and 5 both apply, but I've just removed these from level 5. So for reading, there's a synopsis of what reading is, and then a list of evidence. Could be assessment grades and feedback that demonstrate reading competence and interpretation of scholarly texts. Evidence that shows reading of educational school-based documented, for example, policies, curriculum documents, organisational procedures and interpretation or use of these. Other examples that show high-level reading, interpretation and comprehension skills that can relate to the criteria. So that with that bit, this will come out of our discussion. So we'll come up with some other things to add to our list of evidence. This is a starting point. So the same for writing. That could be assessment grades and feedback that demonstrate reading competence and interpretation of scholarly texts. Evidence that shows reading of educational school-based documents. Other examples that show high-level reading. And then for the oral, feedback from mentor teachers in relation to communication and ability to articulate information to students whilst teaching a concept. Feedback from a lecturer or a grade result on a presentation skills, which included audience engagement, and then something else that perhaps we can come up with over the next few weeks. So it's still fairly open, and we'll be able to come up with what we feel is a shared expectation. So the resources in week 10 provide support for this. As I've said, we'll co-construct ideas regarding how to demonstrate attach our evidence. We'll look at the reflective cycle mentioned in week 10, refer to techniques similar to the STAR model. Attaching evidence of personal literacy, you do not necessarily need to attach the evidence. However, you do need to refer to evidence. Ideally, they should attach or include validation of evidence just for moderation purposes. So it's just to provide some context, and that could be something as simple as a screenshot. The activity and self-assessment content at the base of the week's learning material linked to these aspects. Further resources that you may find useful to draw upon to students are... So we work together to agree and form consensus regarding the evidence that you should be demonstrated in the end. Our consensus should recognise the ACCR Literacy and Numeracy test, which in particular promotes text types and expects students to demonstrate ACF high level 4 or at level 5. So that's where that list of evidence has come from. Demonstrated literacy across the unit and in other units, including practical experience, personal experience, higher written skills within assessment tasks. That reading and writing are a priority, but multiliteracy should be included somewhere. And that how literacy is related to the requirements of a teacher, such as those mentioned in the defining standards of personal literacy and numeracy for teachers, which is on page 27 of the document. And this is the link to the standards. So defining the standards of personal literacy and numeracy for new teachers. Standards of literacy and numeracy expected of new teachers should enable them to be effective teachers and positive role models, regardless of which subject they teach. Aspiring teachers therefore should demonstrate this information there. So all of this has come from the documentation. So hopefully this is going to give you a little bit more context. It is one of the learning objectives, so we need to make sure that we include this in the assessment. How we go about that is definitely open, and we can co-work together in week 10 to come up with some consensus with our list of evidence. Okay, I will talk to you soon.